Hey, welcome back. I have a fun video for you all here today. Someone posted a comment, I just forgot the username, on one of my videos and said, could you do a most video? And I actually can't remember the suggestions that this person commented about, but things like, for instance, this is going to be, for this video, my most heavy-duty knife, or my favorite heavy-duty knife. Not sure if it is the most heavy-duty, but it's right up there. So this is the Demco 8020. This is one of the originals before they started laser etching the blade steel up here on the blade tang, or whatever you want to call that. A very cool one. We believe, by we I mean the Demco folks and the people I've talked to and the guy I bought it from, believe this is a 20 CV based on the way the blade steel looks. They only did 3 different steels. But aside from that, big honking knife, 7.5, 8 ounces, something in that range. And full sizer there, and also just love the locking mechanism. So the Demco 8020 takes my favorite big heavy duty knife there. One of my favorite all-around knives, meaning something that could play a little bit of a heavy duty role, but not really so much, but also makes a great carry knife, is this SPK Lamia V3 in Elmax. So I like the Elmax because you could carry it. It's a great blade steel. He hardens it to like 62 Rockwell hardness. Also just like this handle, it feels strong, the blade thickness and everything. It's substantial, but it's small enough to carry, maybe like a 3.5 ounce knife. Pretty cool one, and just a great all-around knife. Now, this one's more towards carry and use. If I were to modify that slightly on one that is a all-around user kind of mid-heavy use, it would be this one, because this one actually has Cruwear, so it's got a little more toughness, doesn't have the stainless properties, and then it has this brilliant, fantastic nature grip texturing on it. So I kind of like the aesthetic of this one a little more than that one, but really cool. This is the SPK Lamia V1 from his early days when he was making the knives, so a pretty cool one there. Now, one of my favorite carry sort of full-size knives, many may argue that this is not a full-size, but I do believe if you look at that handle that it is, and it's a 3.5 inch plus, or a 3.25, I think, inch blade, if I recall correctly, maybe it's 3 inch, is the Benchmade Bugout, but specifically the 20 CV version that is a Blade HQ exclusive with G10 scales, because it just feels really nice in hand with the G10 versus the Grivery or whatever the FRN scales are that they normally put on there. It's a little heavier, maybe 2 ounces instead of 1.8, or 2.1 instead of 1.8, but it's a brilliant carry knife. It's kind of like a mid-range, not a mid-range, a light carry knife as well. Now, my ultimate favorite, anytime, anywhere, any shorts, carry is the Benchmade Mini Bugout. As you get to use these, you can get a pretty nice solid lockup. It's not perfect, but a pretty solid lockup with good action. It's not perfect. It's a 1.5 ounce knife though, and I can put this in, carry it just about anywhere. Sometimes I'll even carry it on like a bike ride or going to something I would carry almost nothing else. This is the one. My favorite light knife of all time though, my very favorite light knife. It's actually really so big that I don't carry it very often. It may not look like it, but this is a 3.5 inch blade, or 3.65 inch full-size blade at only 1.5 ounces, is by far the VC Edge interface. You think about the weight to size ratio, this is the best pound for pound knife I've ever seen in terms of blade length to size. It's got like a 3.6 inch blade that weighs only 1.5 ounces. Insane engineering from VC Edge, Jason Van Camp over in Southern California. He just did something truly special and remarkable when he made this knife. So the best all-around light knife that I have, you think about like the craziest scenarios, that thing would be really interesting for it. My favorite fixed blade that I have in the collection right now, just as an all-around, is this Boatright Ventifact. I believe this is a Ventifact. I just slipped my mind if that's the right model name right now, but Boatright Bladeworks makes my favorite all-around fixed blade. This particular one I believe is M4, yep, CPM 4V rather, sorry, not M4, CPM 4V. And it is just a really cool handle design, a really cool like dark acid etch up here with a nice like belt satin, hollow grind. This thing just embodies to me what a cool fixed blade is, and I had quite a few tough decisions here. I was going to even potentially include like a lightweight, light carry fixed blade, but I just want to give this one the showcase. I'm not the biggest fixed blade guy, but Boatright does such nice stuff that that is the one that I chose for this. The next one is my favorite prototype in my collection, and this one would be the and I actually probably had a different one, but this one sort of stayed for multiple reasons, but the Brown Knives Mini FSD with the brown lock. So the original Mini FSD, not the Mini FSDI, is my favorite prototype, because I think this was a prototype that he just nailed on the first try, and it's pretty rare that you see a knife that comes out version 1 of prototype and it's so perfect. Now it's cheating a little bit because there was a full-size FSD prototype that wasn't quite as clean as this, but this one right here is the best all-around prototype. Such a cool knife, and to have the prototype of it is really special to me, so I really like having that. Now, one of my favorite all-around knives, but also my favorite closing action in my collection, is the Brown Knives Mini FSD-I, the liner lock version. The action on this knife is just one of my favorite all around, and it is just phenomenal. It's adjustable, so you can get that detent just how you want it. It rolls out nice, it closes nice. So kind of my favorite all around action knife. I think this is it, and it's really the closing action that takes it to the next level for me. This is just a phenomenal knife from an action perspective, and one of the very best that I've ever handled. Now, my favorite model, and so I get to put a few up here. My favorite model is the Roosevelt. Of those, I have 3 versions here. The first one is my favorite one to carry, and it is the full dark washed version. Even the blade on this has been dark washed to make it extremely carryable. It has this awesome radial pattern on the scales, which I love. It feels great in hand. It's just almost like a massage on your hand. I love this model because of the carry size. It's only 3 ounces, or even a little less, and yet you have a full-size grip. So to me, this is probably the best all-around knife folding model I've ever seen. Love the action on it. It doesn't quite have that drop shut action, but it does have a very satisfying kind of controlled drop action. You can certainly whip it down if you want to get it all the way closed. It's just a phenomenal model. It has 2 detent balls, so even when you're putting pressure on the lock bar, being a frame lock, you can still roll it out. It doesn't get that like handcuff thing where it gets stuck. That is just a phenomenal one. One of my most prized knives, but my favorite of my Roosevelts, arguably it's kind of goes back and forth a little bit, is this latter Damascus version. This was from the Makers Syndicate show 2023. And it is one of the coolest knives I have. It's probably my favorite Damascus knife as well, so that can kind of cover that category. And gosh, it's just a really cool all-around design and model where there's this kind of fun look between the blade and the handle, milling pattern. That is just my favorite all-around Roosevelt. And then my most rare, or potentially most collectible Roosevelt here, is this Rosie number 10. This is the 10th one he's made. Now you think about this, this guy's now made like 4,000 of these. This has become one of the most prolific American-made knives based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. This particular one is just so simple on the scales and so colorful on the anodized. And a hand-rubbed blade. This is just one of the coolest Rosies that's out there in my opinion. And I feel very lucky to have it in the collection. Rosie number 10 is that most collectible of that favorite model. All right, that brings me to my favorite custom knife that I own, which is the Hansen Onyx. The action, the look, the hand-rubbed satin blade, the fact you can roll it out. It's as good from an action perspective, I'd say, as a Rosie. It's like right there, but you will see when I flick that, a little sharp on the thumb hole is like my least favorite thing about it, and so you get a little fingernail loss every time you do a reverse flick with it. But aside from that, the Damascus or the Zircotai and the just the beauty of it, the lightweight nature of it, This is just one of the coolest knives in my collection. It's one of my favorite, you know, top 3 knives along with this guy here. And boy, Scott Hansen only makes maybe a couple of these a year in the Onyx. He makes maybe 10 knives a year total on average or something like that. I don't know what it fluctuates a bit, so I won't try and speak to it too much. But man, that is one of my favorite knives in my collection, and it is my favorite custom knife in my collection, the Hansen Onyx there. All right, my favorite knife to cut with, especially for things like packages. As you can see, I literally have a nice little piece of tape on there from cutting open a package probably yesterday. You can see this thing gets used like crazy. This is just the regular Gerber O10A version of the Demco 80-20.5, and I have used this thing so thoroughly, so many times. I sharpen it. It's got a nice thick blade, just loves to be sharpened. Just keeps getting, like as I sharpen it, the blade lasts longer and longer on the edge retention. It's pretty simple, 150 MSRP. You can probably get them on sale for like 125. It is a very simple shark foot blade, but man, I love the way it cuts and stuff. So this is my favorite knife to cut with. This next one's a little random, may not be relevant to you, but this is my favorite knife that I was given for free. This is a 20 CV version of the Demco knives Shark Cub. It's in the G10, which feels great in hand. It has a full-size grip, even though it's a super mini knife. It's, you know, only maybe like an ounce heavier than this guy, maybe 2.5 ounces or so. Really nice action on it. Took me a little while to get used to this skinny shark lock, but man, I am really pleased. Demco sent this to me to do a review on it, and I don't get a ton of knives. I've gotten some good ones from here and there. You know, gotten one from TRM and a few others, but this is like my favorite knife I was ever gifted by a knife company. So pretty cool. Again, a little random element of the channel, but it is what it is. This one here is my favorite Swiss Army knife. This is the Victorinox Scientist. And why is it my favorite? Because you get the best of both worlds. You get the corkscrew with, in this case, the little mini screwdriver that fits into it, which is awesome. You get the extra pen, so it has the extra scales that has a pen in it on top of, oops, sorry. Good thing that dropped over here on my cheapo 80-20.5 beater knife. It has the typical toothpick and tweezers. It also has a very useful, good for, you know, pulling out a splinter, magnifying glass. What makes it all possible to be in 2 layers, and why I like it so much, is that it has this combo tool that makes it so you don't have to have a tool on either side to accomplish the screwdriver, the can opener, the wire strip, or whatever. It basically takes 2 tools into one, which just makes so much sense. So opposed to that, you can fit the blade, which is awesome. It does not have the mini blade, which I never really saw value in anyway. And then it has a screwdriver in the handle. And the reason that's useful is because you want to do this with your screwdriver. Very hard to get into areas when your screwdriver is back here and you're having to use your screwdriver like this on your Phillips. Like that does not give you a lot of room to get into stuff. You'll hit you know, stuff if you're going into a tight corner or whatever. So this is my favorite all-around Swiss Army knife, especially for a 2-layer. For a 3-layer, if you're interested, the Yeoman is my favorite, where it's this plus the scissors, basically. The next one is my favorite knife made in China. The Winterblade Factor, and this particular one is the batch 1, where it had a little tighter detent, a little stronger feel on the action. I mean, just listen to that ting. Super cool. And yeah, one of my favorite knives. The batch 1s were just a little different. They had 2 magnets, I believe, one on either side. There's just little differences, 2 little detent things, one on either side. When it's in this little space down here. It is just a really cool version of the Factor, and there's only so many of them out there. The batch 1 was not, you know, heavy. I don't know, maybe 500 knives or 1,000 knives. I don't know what the exact number is, but there are not a ton of batch 1s out there. A little bit of a different screw here. It's a little quirkier. I like the newer ones more in some ways, but my favorite knife made in China there by, I believe he did his manufacturing with Best Tech. My favorite budget knife, by far, it's like not even close. There's one other that kind of comes to mind, but it's not quite as budget. My favorite budget knife under 50 bucks is the CJRB Pyrite, just the original one. I really like this original one. I don't love the blade steel with the ARPM9, but man, this model with the steel handles was just like a phenomenal knife for $49. Very hard to beat, fun action, really nice forward choil if you want to choke up on it. Just all around, like the jimping's there, maybe you could argue this would be a little better with like a thumb hole version, which they do have with the sheep's foot, but I actually really like this original one the most. So yeah, CJRB Pyrite, my favorite budget knife. Now we said favorite out of China. The number 2, I'd say, location to get knives out of is South Africa. I think they do a lot of phenomenal custom knives. So my favorite knife based out of South Africa is this beautiful Gareth Bull Knives Shamwari 3.5 inch. When they do this milling, which is very rare, they mostly do a smooth scale because they are full custom shop. That means they're actually cutting each one of those lines into their, like, I don't want to say manually, they're using machines, but it's not CNC, right? So this thing is just a phenomenal knife, a beast. It's got a beautiful hand rubbed satin blade on it. I kind of just love this Zerk Bullseye. I do like the newer ones with the fancier pivots, the Spiro and the Gambler pivots. Those are really cool, but this one with the little pivot collar and everything adds a little flair to it. And man, this thing is just a beast of a knife. I can't even pull that sucker out of there. It's just a little heavier and a little bigger and better and badder than any other sham I've ever handled. So a real full-size knife there, and just a very rare one, by the way. He made 2 like this, and only a handful of, I don't know, maybe a couple handfuls of 3.5 inch exist from Bull Knives. So those are my some of my favorite knives in their given categories. I hope you enjoyed that. This is certainly a fun one for me to do because I get to talk about some of my favorite knives that I have in my collection. I am sure I forgot a few because I do have quite a few knives, but yeah, I thought these were representative of some of my favorites that I have. And I know it's a little funny having 3 Rosies and 2 Lamias in here, but those are some of my favorite models, 2 brown knives, versions of the Mini FSD and Mini FSDI, but man, and 2 Demcos, 3 Demcos total, in various different sizes. That's just kind of how my mind works. These are some of my favorite knives I have, and hopefully those are some good ones for you to either rejoice about because you like them too, or potentially learn about as well. That's all for now. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.